All right, happy Canada Day, everybody. All the deals are done. Elliotte Friedman was up until... Actually, it's 32 thoughts, Elliotte Friedman. Did you sleep?
Not much.
Yeah. Well, how pissed do you get when someone texts you that isn't affiliated with a hockey team? Like, they're like, what are you doing later today? Like, you get one of those?
No, you learn to compartmentalize, JD.
Okay.
So you just ignore that stuff.
Okay. Well, thanks for not ignoring me and doing this today, because I know you're super busy and I appreciate the time.
Man.
So, where are we at with the Tanev negotiations, and why did
that's going to be done. It's going to be done before noon.
Okay. So
I just don't like. I think it's going to come in. I think around 6 times 4.5 in that area. I'm not sure about structure and clauses yet or anything like that. But that's going to get done, and it's going to get done well before noon, I think.
So it just fell apart with Dallas because they apparently really wanted him. They just didn't want to do the term?
Well, I think that Toronto, like Dallas wanted to keep him for sure. Mm-hmm. But I think Toronto really wanted him. Like, he's been Brad Treliving's number one target for a long time. Mm-hmm. And like, he tried to get him during the year. He couldn't get him. But he knows him. He likes him. He really values him. He's a right-hand shot. Toronto's desperately looking for right-hand shots. And also, don't forget, like, Tanev is a Toronto area guy. Like, his family's here. I think there was a lot of mutual interest here. And I think the moment he knew that Toronto was interested and willing to do talk about this kind of thing, because I heard Tanev was probably going to get at least $25 million out there. So once Toronto was willing to get to this kind of a deal, I think it became very, very likely. Did you see Frank Saravelli's tweet yesterday about the league being kind of aware of these kind of deals, though? This would take Tanev into his age 40 season. Yeah.
And do you think Toronto has any fears about punitive stuff down the line?
No.
Okay, yeah.
I don't.
Yeah.
I don't.
What's your sense on that anyways?
It's a perfectly legal contract.
Yeah.
I don't worry about that. Yeah.
So you don't think that this is all of a sudden going to be a quick change on the fly here, like 3 years into the Tanev deal, the league's going to go, well, actually.
I mean, like, you know, it was funny. Like, I was talking about this with someone yesterday, mm-hmm. Another manager who really likes Tanev. And, you know, we were talking about, like, how long this would last. And he kind of, at the end of the conversation, he kind of laughed. He said, you know what, with everything that Chris Tanev's body's been through, you could probably get away with putting him on LTIR now.
Yeah.
And so we were kind of just laughing about it. I mean, we'll see. Like, you know, like, the thing about Tanev is we all know, like, you know, it would take, like, removal of limbs to get him off the ice.
Yeah.
So, you know, he's going to, look, this is for now as opposed to later. Mm-hmm. Like, they're not going to worry about what this is going to look like in 4 or 5 or 6 years. They want to make an impact now, and he's one of the best defensemen out there. So that's why we are where we are. So
what's the next move on the blue line then for Toronto? Because they said this is a priority for them. If not, well, actually, they said it explicitly that it's priority number one. Where do they turn to next?
I think you're going to. I think they're very interested in Oliver Ekman-Larsson. Mm-hmm. I think they have a very real chance of getting him done. Like, I was just on Vancouver, and I talked about 3 times 4. Someone said it might end up being the other way around, 4 times 3 plus. But you think that's that bad? I don't think that's that bad at all.
3 times 4 for OEL? Yeah, it's a little steep for me, I would say. But yeah,
really?
Yeah. I guess if Lilligren were living in a world where he got 3, but yeah.
Yeah, I don't think that's that bad at all, really. But everybody's different, I guess.
Yeah. How about Zadorov? Do you think that they're still in on him?
No, I think he's most likely Boston.
Okay. And then
I heard last night the Leafs had realized they probably couldn't get him.
Yeah. Do you think that had any impact on the Lilligren contract?
No, I think that's a completely different situation. I think they wanted to keep the rights to Lilligren, and I'm not sure where this is all going to go with Lilligren here. I mean, he might still end up getting dealt or something like that, but I don't think the Leafs wanted to non-qualify him or lose him for nothing. I think that's also about, like, if he's not here at the beginning of the year, I think that contract is about asset management as about anything else.
Yeah, which makes a lot of sense. It's just it kind of did feel like the writing on the wall was going to be that this guy is getting traded. But now I wonder if he is maybe a contingency plan. Like this is just was my theory is, well, you couldn't lose him for nothing. So sign him to this contract. And if you strike out in free agency, you keep him. And if you hit, you deal him. But the question is, what would his value be?
Well, I think you got a lot of time to figure that out.
Okay.
Look, if they saw something they liked, it would have been done already, right? Mm-hmm. And also, don't forget it's free agency now, so we'll see where people end up. Mm-hmm. Some people will. There will be people at the end of the day today that won't like what they have or didn't get what they want, and they'll sit there and they'll say, "Okay, maybe we'll circle back to Toronto or something like that." I think the thing that really helps this whole situation, JD, is that now everybody knows what he's going to be making, right? Mm-hmm. You don't have to negotiate a contract with him; it's done, and I think that's in his own best interest too.
So what about the other guy the other young guy that is, I guess, for sure going to get traded? I'm guessing that it's been done. You've been reporting for a while that Robertson had been flirting with trade requests, that he very much wanted to play and prove himself on the ice at the NHL level. He has now reportedly requested a trade. What is his value around the league? And does Toronto try and salvage that situation with a new head coach, or is that too far gone?
I think that they'll just wait it out. I mean, the problem is, like, Nick Robertson's a talented guy. Mm-hmm. It hasn't worked here. And in my history in these situations, the biggest challenge for a trade is that other teams are going to say, well, it hasn't worked out for him there. He hasn't shown us enough, so we don't want to give you a lot. And the Leafs will probably argue, well, you know what, maybe that's true, but we know he's talented. Mm-hmm. And, because the last thing you want is some guy to go somewhere else and make you look bad, right? So you always try to hedge against that with a bigger return. Mm-hmm. The other thing, too, is I think the Maple Leafs will deal with that as it comes. It's not really a front burner issue for them. So they'll deal with it as it comes.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that makes sense. And yeah, Toronto completely unfamiliar with the idea of guys going somewhere else, having success, and embarrassing the city and the fan base. This has never happened before. So hopefully it doesn't happen for the first time with Nick Robertson. You were the one that broke the news on Domi. He comes in at 4, just under 4. What would his market have looked like if he explored free agency? Because people here do love knowing, how much money a guy left on the table to stay and be a Toronto Maple Leaf.
Probably about the same. Okay. I think that would have been the case. He is the thing about. I think they really wanted to keep him. Mm-hmm. Look, I think at the beginning his ask was 5 times 5. I don't think Toronto was going there. I heard last week that his ask was at 4 times 4, and the Leafs were counting 3 times 3, mm-hmm. and they kind of got it done just in between. I think at the end of the day, they wanted to keep him. I think he wanted to be here. He seemed to have good chemistry with Matthews. Those are I just think he wanted to be here and they wanted him, mm-hmm. and you find your common ground. But I do think it would have been in that area where he signed for.
Why did it shift, though? Like, it did seem like he was don't worry, we're going to circle back on you guy, and then he ends up being the one that gets done before anyone. Well,
I just think that he has the most attachment to Toronto, right? I think if you, it's not that Tyler Bertuzzi didn't want to stay in Toronto. Mm-hmm. I just think that he had, I just think that Domi, because of his deep connection to the market, was willing to bend a bit to get things done, probably more than Bertuzzi was. I mean, if you look at what Bertuzzi's going to get, 4 times 5.5, Toronto wasn't going to do that here.
What's your understanding about whether the Leafs explored trading for Logan Thompson, and what do you forecast they do next when it comes to their plans in net?
Well, I think they really are interested in Anthony Stolarz from Florida. He's on their radar. Laurent Brossoit is on their radar. I think they tried for Markstrom. Excuse me, JD. They tried for Markstrom. They couldn't beat. They couldn't beat New Jersey's offer. I think that was the guy they really wanted. If they had a choice, I believe Markstrom was the guy. Mm-hmm. But they obviously didn't get it done. And I don't know how big they were into Thompson, to be perfectly honest. Mm-hmm. It wasn't a deal that was really hard to beat. I don't necessarily think, but I really haven't heard how much they were in or out on him.
My original thought was that Brossoit and Stolarz might get a little inflated because there's no real goalies after them. But now you look around the landscape and there's not a lot of opportunities to like play. Toronto is really offering that. So would you consider them the front runners for Stolarz, given that they have the most immediate path for him to get significant ice time?
I don't know about that because, like, the one thing is that Stolarz had a really comfortable situation last year in Florida, and he played really well. And like in the regular season, he plays there. Like they're not going to let Bobrovsky play 1,000 games anymore.
Yeah.
So the challenge for Toronto is you're taking Stolarz out of a comfortable situation. I also think that, he's probably a guy who's looking at it and saying he hasn't made a ton of money. So what is the best chance for him to cash in? So I think it's a combination of play. He was already in a really good situation, and now, he's probably looking at it and saying, what's the best deal I can make for a guy who hasn't made a ton of money? So that's your challenge.
So from just speaking to you now, it seems like Leafs are in on OEL. They want to get obviously a backup goalie done, and it looks like they're going to do that through free agency. What about up front? Because it felt like for a while that Perron was a lock, and now the camp is quiet. And yeah, where do you think Toronto goes? What are some names that you're hearing that they are, at least looking at when it comes to their forward group?
That's I think they had some interest in DeBrusk. Like I've said all the way through, I thought DeBrusk was going to Seattle, and someone told me last night that they didn't think that was going to happen. That they thought, this is a guy too who thought the same thing, and he was getting some noise last night that maybe that's changing. Now, I know they had some interest in him. What that says to me is the competition for DeBrusk is very, very deep. And so that's the guy I was kind of looking at, but it sounds based on last night, it might be getting priced out of their situation.
So where do they pivot to?
That's what I got to figure out.
Okay. So, we're waiting to see what ends up happening there. Could conceivably, like, again, this is a team that if they do end up with OEL at that number and Tanev at the 4-5 and a goaltender, like let's say 2, 2.5, 3, somewhere in that range, right? Like if we're looking at a Stolarz or a Brossoit, it doesn't leave them a ton of cap space. Could they end up doing cap clearing moves? Like, is there a scenario to you where they approach guys like Kampf, Yarncroke, Reeves, and they try to get off of that money and try and replace them with league min guys?
I think that kind of thing is always possible. Like if you take a look at what's happening around the league right now, there's really tough decisions being made, really hard decisions being made. Look at Tampa with Stamkos. Look at the Rangers with Trouba. Like look what's going on out there. So we're starting to see people make really hard decisions. So so I think you have to approach your roster like that if you can.
So, speaking of hard decisions, Marchessault and Stamkos. What do you think? I'm going to just stick with Stamkos here. Do you think there's going to be a significant fallout in Tampa if he's signed somewhere else?
No, because they got Gensel.
Yeah, but I mean more so from the culture.
I think the fans will be upset.
Yeah.
Hold on 1 second.
Yeah, you can take all the time you want. I'll fill. You do whatever you got to do. It's just you break it on air.
I think the way I kind of see it right now is, they'll be happy with Gensel because he's a great player. I think the fans will be disappointed because he's Stamkos. I think on some level they may look at it and say they don't think he was treated properly. Like he was definitely treated much different than a lot of other players who are Hall of Famers or not in Tampa. But you know how this goes. Like Tampa's look what they did with Ryan McDonough. Look what they did with Ryan McDonough. Tampa makes hard choices. Now Stamkos is probably the one that's rocked the public the most.
Yeah.
But you know how it works, JD. If you win games, it goes away.
Yeah. Okay. So I can't remember what you call it on the podcast. The scalding, boiling situation surrounding Mitch Marner? Like you don't like touching it. I gotta make you touch it. All right, you gotta touch it. You just touch it.
Well, look, I've been pretty honest about it.
Yeah, for sure.
I think they're gonna offer him a contract.
Yeah. Okay. So here's my question about the contract. Because yes, you did report that, and that podcast dropped at I don't even know. It was very late, but I listened to it the second it came out, and it kept me up.
Really appreciate that.
No, but it kept me up because I was like, you threw it in, and you were like, they're offering him. They're going to extend him an offer, and I went, wait, what kind of an offer? Here's my question about the offer. Is your sense that it's a good faith offer, as in one that he would realistically accept?
Well, to me, a good faith offer is not one that he would realistically accept. A good faith offer is
start the negotiation.
A good faith offer is one that is reasonable for them to make you. Okay. I don't think they're going to waste anybody's time. I don't think they're going to offer him 8 times 7 or anything like that. I assume they'll throw him an offer that is a big offer. The question is, will it be one that Marner finds acceptable? And I've said this many times, but I believe that Mitch's agent is Darren Ferris, whose belief is I walk my guys right to free agency unless you give me a reason to do otherwise. And that's the way I kind of look at this whole situation.
If the Leafs are extending an offer, do they try and make it so that there is not a full no-move clause? Again, this is an organization that gives limited no-move clauses to David Kampf.
It's funny. It's funny that you bring this up.
Yeah.
And I was having a conversation with someone about it with Trouba.
Yeah.
So Trouba signed an 8-year deal. The first 6 years were a full no-move clause, and now the last 2, it's partial. And he said that one of the things you have to do is always give yourself an out. That, you have to create yourself a situation where you say to people that you say to people, hey, we're happy to give you all this money. We're happy to give you lots of term. But at the end of the deal, we need the ability partially somehow to offload the deal. And that's what they're doing with Trouba here. Now it's ugly and it's bitter and it's turned out to be a bit of a fight, but a lot of teams believe in that very strongly. And that's one thing that Toronto hasn't done. And I'm curious to see if they try to do it. Just say, hey, let's just say for argument's sake, they offer a Nylander's deal. Then maybe what they do is they say, we'll give you 8 years, no move clause, but the last 2, you have to give us some off ramps. And I know a lot of teams do try to do that.
Yeah, see, if I'm Toronto, the way it makes the most sense is if you have the off-ramps early, considering...
that JD,
that's not happening.
Did you sign a contract like that? If Rogers came to you and said, we're going to offer you an 8-year deal, but we want ways to get rid of you in the first 2 years, how are you going to feel?
I mean, I'd be like, I can't believe that you want me for 2 years. I would be,
that's fantastic, JD. That's very good.
I would be thrilled with that. So, okay. My thing with him, though, is everybody kind of had this expectation, and I think rightfully so, because all the suits sat up at the podium and they all talked kind of tough as though there was going to be kind of major changes and major evaluations. And I've said this all along, but I've never felt like it was fair that it was all on Marner's shoulders. You made a great point in your piece that you put up, I think this morning or late last night, about how, he's going to probably go down as the greatest Toronto-born player to ever wear the sweater for the Leafs, or at least one of them. But yeah, the thing I don't understand is, for a player of his caliber, why weren't more teams approaching Toronto and making significant offers? Because all I've ever heard is that no one gave them anything realistic. Well, because that was that's kind of where I'm going and asking you is what were the offers like to Toronto then for Marner's services? Why did this seemingly never really go down that path? Because it hasn't felt that way from the outside.
Well, I think that one of the problems is that Marner has control over it, right?
Yep.
So even if you get great offers, you might not be able to do anything. The thing is, you have to go back to last year with Nylander. They had Nylander available all summer. They were looking for the best D that they could get. Those guys are hard to find, and they never found anything that they liked, right? And eventually, Nylander got off to a great start, and they re-signed him. Now, I think this with Marner. I think that, I just think that if there was a trade that dropped on their lap that they thought, ooh, that's a really good deal, of course I think they would consider it. But remember that Marner has the hammer, so they can't do anything without his approval.
Yeah, I would have just thought that maybe they weren't going to him and talking tough and saying, hey, we want this to be over, because there was that out there, right? The theory of, well, what you could do is play hardball.
The thing is, you can do that.
Yeah, and it wasn't going to work.
What if he says no?
Yeah, no. Then and so I understood the approach of, hey, let teams call you.
The thing is, like with what the Rangers have done.
Yeah.
Like they could put Barclay Goodrow on waivers. We'll see what they do with Trouba.
Yeah.
But Toronto can't do any of that.
Yeah. I look at a thing like the Gensel contract, right? And I say, okay, this is a player that I think most people, I know he had a good playoffs and that some people think that he is a more reliable guy in the postseason, but, not a big player, not a massive guy, not a point producer like Marner is. And, he's getting $9 million in Florida. And I would just think that a lot of organizations would be saying, hey, why wouldn't we at least try to really buy lower on Marner and then have him in the building and try to negotiate with him on fresh start? And let's offer Toronto a very significant package that they have to consider, that they have to take to the Marner camp. It's just if they've gotten that, then wow, they've done one hell of a job keeping it quiet. But yeah, I think a little odd that a player of that caliber becomes I guess at least you can talk to us about him, and that little becomes of it. That's all. That's just I think a little bit of an oddity to me. Okay, so last 5 seasons.
The thing is, I have no problem with people negotiating what they can.
Sure.
I have no problem with that.
Yeah. I don't think most would. Last one. I know you're very busy, and I appreciate that you spent this much time. In the last 5 seasons.
Joseph Woll is officially.
Oh, it's official.
3 times 3.66.
Okay. It's fine. I hope he plays. I really hope he plays games. Because if he does, he's great. But I think it's 39 games in the NHL so far. Not a huge lengthy track record. Goalie guys love him. Kevin Woodley talked to me about his sit down with Joe Woll and said that, yeah, he's got like Carey Price level brain. It's just a matter of whether or not he can put it down on the ice. But yeah, so there's a great scenario for that. But, I always get a little nervous when it comes to the injury-prone guys. Last 5 seasons, 7 representatives in the Stanley Cup final have come from teams that enjoy no state tax. Does the NHL view this as an issue that could be addressed, or is this something that we never see changes to?
I wouldn't want to say never, but I would be like, this has to be a CBA issue.
Mm-hmm.
And number one, the owners have to want to do it. Bettman has to want to do it, and the players have to want to agree to it.
I don't know how the players part of it works. Whether
Well, that's the thing.
Yeah. What part? Like, what's their involvement in this? They're like,
the thing is, in theory, what you could do is you would think there would be more money than the players.
Yeah.
If you say, well, if Florida's salary cap is $100 million, Toronto's going to be $110.
Yeah.
But what if the league tries to go the other way and says, well, maybe we say Florida's salary cap is less because of the tax advantages. So it's like that would have to be a negotiated thing. I'm with you, JD. It's becoming a bigger issue. If you're a warm weather team with no taxes, there is no excuse for you not to win in this league now. None. But it has to be a collectively bargained issue.
Yeah, I thought about it a little bit more with what we saw with Edmonton during the run is, they were just spectacular and their fans were insane. And you looked at the TV ratings in the States, and I think that they did one of their biggest numbers in the last decade, right? And I know it was a Game 7, but you got to sell the game on, hey, this is a passionate fan base. Hockey matters here. And they've got the best player in the game. So tune in for McDavid. And if I'm the league, I'm going, I want the best players in the markets that matter being visible. And Florida, I know people take shots at them. I'm not trying to just dump on them all over. But I saw, Barstool Sports, for example, they put out T-shirts. They're a very popular merch site. They did record lows for their championship with Florida fans. I thought that the Florida Parade, they jammed everybody.
Yeah, but the thing is, the problem is, first of all, JD, you're only as strong as a league. You're only as strong as your weakest link.
Sure.
Look at what we just went through with Arizona.
Yep.
And the other thing, the thing that I think amazed some people about, even inside hockey, about their Game 7 rating, especially in the U.S., is that the Edmonton market doesn't matter in the U.S. TV-wise, and Florida is where the Panthers play is one of the smallest markets.
Yeah.
In the league TV-wise. Like people used to say that about the Raptors in the NBA, still do probably.
Oh, they do.
But they don't matter. So like I hate that kind of talking. I like, to me that's loser thinking. Like I understand not everyone's New York or not everyone's LA, but all your markets matter.
My main point though there is not so much that it's like, but if you are fine, all markets matter. But like you said, it's just such a competitive advantage for a lot of markets that they matter, strongest links, but are not your number one cash cows as a league. Like, you're not going to benefit the most from Florida winning multiple Stanley Cups or from Dallas winning multiple Stanley Cups.
So what do you want to do, like fix the league?
No, I just kind of want to have the feeling of a bit of a more even playing field for some of these cities where it's so much more expensive to live. Like, man, you got to buy a house in New York versus where you got to live in Florida. And then you talk about the taxes. And it's like, yeah, of course a player wants to go there. And I got to think that someone is going to have a creative idea, because I don't have it. And the scenario that you outlined, I'm like, damn, it's hard for me to envision a scenario where the owners start to get involved and go, we really want this and we're going to push for this, or that players are willing to accept their part of it or put it on their slate. But it's just, it's starting to feel a little, like a little much. That's all. And this is the first time.
This I totally get.
Yeah.
Like, because I think that's true.
Mm-hmm.
Like, I think there are a lot of people who do feel that it is true. Mm-hmm. However, if the players in the league aren't going to agree to fix it, there's nothing that can be done about it. Yeah. Like, that's the thing. Like, the CBA is up in 2 years. I'm very curious to see if and Tanev is 6 times 4.5. I think a full no move clause.
Okay. Yeah. Just coming in. Leafs have put it out there as well. Hey, Elliotte, I don't know how you've been able to manage the schedule. You're almost there. You're almost there. Like, soon, time to relax. You're just right on the doorstep. You're just on the goal line. Just finish it out, and then it's vacation time. Thanks so much for making time, man.
My pleasure.
Yeah, take care. Elliotte Friedman, 32 Thoughts. You can see him on television later today. A lot there on the Leafs.